In this lesson, we are going to go into more detail on the regional and language settings that were set during site configuration in the installation process. These settings are going to tell your site where you're located geographically, which is helpful if you have any map-based information on your site, as well as what time zone to use for displaying times, and what languages to make available for content translation or for users in the administrative interface. While all of these settings can be changed later, it's much easier on you as a site builder if you set them up at the beginning of your project. This way, you don't have to change basic structural information on your site once you've done a lot of work or added a lot of content. While it's always possible to change things later on, it can be very difficult and it might make a lot of work for you. So, setting this up right from the beginning is really the way to go. So we're going to head over to configuration, and then we're going to scroll down on this page to regional and language, which is on the right-hand side. Right now, there are only two options, regional settings and date time formats. We're going to click on regional settings, and what we see here really matches what we set up during the installation process. So you're telling your site where you're located, what time zone you're in, and now you can also determine whether or not users are able to set their own time zone. So if your site needs to be really international or needs to span many locations across a country that might have different time zones, then you can actually allow users to adjust this so that they see times in their time zone. If you make any changes to this, make sure that you save your configuration using the blue button at the bottom. Once you're happy with your regional settings, you'll want to go back to the date and time formats. So I'm going to use this breadcrumb here to get back to regional and language and see the other options available, which right now only includes date and time formats. If I click on this, I can see all of the date and time formats that exist out of the box, and there are quite a few. I can scroll down and take a look at what these look like in the pattern column, and I can go ahead and edit some of them, long, medium, and short. You'll see that there are operations with a big edit button where I can actually make changes to these particular formats if I want to. If I would like to make a custom format, then I can go ahead and click on the Add Format button. Here I will name my format, and I will call this Time Only, and then I'll add a format string which requires that I use PHP to identify what that format string is going to look like. So if I want my time only to display in hour, minute, and then AM or PM, I'll use the PHP designators to determine that. And you'll see that I'm getting a preview over here on the right-hand side of this field, showing me what this particular choice that I've made will look like. If I don't know what the designators are, I can click on PHP manual here, and I'm opening this in a new tab by holding down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on Windows. And then I can flip over here and see what formats are available. So now I've used the proper identifiers for how I want this time only string to look, and then I can go ahead and add format. If I scroll down here a little bit, you'll see that time only is now a format that's available. It is a format that I can edit as well if I want to make changes to the settings that I made. You'll see how these formats can be used when we get into working with views and content types and really customizing how those display. So now I'm going to go back to the regional and language settings here. And again, we only have two options available to us right now, but I know that this particular site needs to be a multilingual site. So we want to extend our site to be able to be multilingual. Language is one of the options that comes with Drupal out of the box in core, but it's not enabled functionality because many sites don't need to be multilingual. So as we've mentioned before, it's really best practice to only enable the functionality that you actually need so that your site is as bare bones as it can be and therefore is more performant and your user interface is more comfortable because it doesn't have excess cruft that you don't need. But right now we do need language, so I'm going to click on Extend. And we're going to cover the extend functionality in another lesson. So bear with me right now while I do this fairly quickly because this isn't really what needs to be covered in this lesson. I'm looking for the language module. I'll click on that and save configuration in order to enable it. Now I will head back to configuration, scroll down to regional and language, and now you'll see that I have 4 options available. Languages and content language have been added since I enabled that language module. We're going to click on languages, and here you can see that the only language that we have listed right now is English, because that's what I used when I installed the site. But let's say that I know that I want traditional Chinese available to this site as well, because perhaps there's a constituency to this particular site that is Chinese, and I want to make sure that they can actually use the site just as well as an English speaker. So I'll go to Add Language, and this is one of the wonderful things about Drupal, especially Drupal 8, which makes it very easy, but this has been a feature in Drupal for quite some time. There are a lot of language packs that are in Drupal right out of the box, and you can go ahead and make a choice of one of those language packs. And these are kept up to date by the community. If you choose your language and click Add Language, it's now going to install that language and make it available to your Drupal site. You can also set which language is default, and in this case, we're going to keep the default language as English because that is going to be the primary user language on this particular site. There's a detection and selection tab here, which allows you to choose how a language is detected so that the content or interface language that's presented to the user is appropriate to that particular user. Heading back to the regional and language tab here, we can go to content language, and you can see that you can make translation available to different types of content on the site. These different content options will be covered in other lessons, so you'll understand what their purposes are and know whether or not you need to make them available for translation. In this case, we're just going to add content and leave everything else out. Save configuration. If we return to regional and language settings now and go back to date and time formats, I want to show you that you can actually set your date and time formats to be available to a specific language. So let's look at this time only format that we created, and we'll go ahead and edit it. Now there's a new field here, a drop-down with language selection. So I can make this format available only to English, only to Chinese, or I can make it not specified or not applicable so that this particular date format can be used in both languages. So in this lesson, we reviewed the basic regional and language settings to place your site into a geographic location and time zone, and to make your site capable of being multilingual and enabling the ability to have translations on your content.